I am here with the EtherLambos community leader. I actually asked a handful of people in the community. I said, if I need to talk to somebody who's the leader, who has all the information, all the intel, every single person directed me to you. I know there's a interesting story within the EtherLambos community with the anonymous dev team. You've kind of been that intermediary and a lot of information that's coming out. We had a recent historical resurgence. EtherLambos floor got up to like 3 ETH or something at the point in time, and people are coming in and sweeping the entire collection. A lot of stuff going in, but still like humbly has just been swept under the rug. So I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into the world of the first Lambo collection on Ethereum, or maybe ever.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thanks so much, Jake. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk more about this. I've been with EtherLambos since September, August timeframe, when the NFT market was really picking up. Historicals were really starting to sort of find their resurgence. People were starting to find these old collections from the past, and people were starting to dig. And so super exciting that me and a couple of friends stumbled upon this collection, and we're like, what? This is the first car NFT collection like ever on Ethereum. And so super exciting. We felt like it was a hidden gem, and oh man, it's been like a crazy ride since. It's like the rest is history. But yeah, super excited to talk more about it.
Were you one of the first excavators to uncover EtherLambos? And were you just searching through the blockchain? I guess just take us a little bit through that discovery.
Yeah, totally. So there was so much going on at that time, and NFTs were still fairly new to me. Like, I was familiar with CryptoPunks. I had been in the cryptocurrency space for years, and worked in the technology space for years. And so, very familiar with the space, but, with everything going on with the pandemic and everything that kind of led up to what happened with NFTs, these kind of came about. We were digging into deeper collections. We were starting to see some collections kind of come on the rise. People were making whispers about Ether rocks, and, I was evaluating Ether rocks, taking a look at those. And I'm like, what are these things? What, how does this work? What is this whole space? And, I wanted to go after things that I was passionate about, that I thought were personally cool, and also fit the narrative of they're scarce, they're old historical NFTs from, a long time ago. And, there's something that kind of fits that meme value. You got the When Lambo sort of meme parody, and they're a cool flex, right? So I actually had a friend on Twitter DM me at the time, and this was super early. I was getting into NFTs, and he had discovered this. He was one of the first 2 people to find it, and he said, "Hey, check this out." Took a look at him, and I was like, what? How does no one know about these, right? Like, what is going on? And took a much deeper dive there, and just fell in love with the collection. Just fell in love, and that really started everything. So,
and from my understanding, the original EtherLambos are ERC20, correct? Because they predate, or they had to be rewrapped. I know there's something there, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, they're on ERC20, and the contract it's an old contract, so it's written a little funky, and people ask about it because there's just some different things about the contract that you have to navigate. When they pulled to OpenSea originally, they pulled the date in which they were minted on OpenSea, the date the collection started on OpenSea. But if you take a look at the contract itself, you'll see the actual mint dates of the models themselves. So it's just an older contract, and you have to dig to find the information, but it's all there. So,
and if you're familiar with the historical space, then you're aware that this is pretty common for anything that predates the ERC 721 standard. This is same with curio cards, with Mooncats, crypto cats. A lot of these contracts have the similar issue. So you have to do a little bit more digging to really understand how old some of these are. And the date is really important for most, but it's not really important for everybody. That's where you get the difference between age versus aesthetics, which is always an ongoing debate in this in this industry.
100%. And I always find it really interesting because, sometimes it's age is important. It's not everything, right? But there's also that factor of like, is it cool? Is it interesting? Do people like it? Do people find these like a cool flex on Twitter? I kind of have this like check mark of things that are checklist of things that I think are important as a part of collections. And in my opinion, this collection really checks all those different boxes. So, it's super cool.
After you and your friend group uncovered these, what was the process to getting in touch with the dev team? Because I know they are still currently anonymous, and this has put you in this situation that you currently are the intermediary.
Yeah, totally. So we all reached out to not only the EtherLambos main site, but we also, DM them directly on Twitter. We're like, hey, this resurgence is going on. We didn't really see much activity going on Twitter at the time when we rediscovered them. And they got back to us almost immediately. And, we opened a line of communication with them, me and a team of others, including Fuse and some other guys that I work closely with as a part of the community. And it was super interesting because there was just one thing after the other about the collection that we started uncovering that just got us more and more interested. And we went down this rabbit hole of information. I mean, so just talking about the history itself, these were minted around the same time as Ether Rocks. And there's only 1,600 total supply. And at the time we were like, wow, this is incredibly scarce given the age. You talk about punks. I mean, there's 10,000 punks. There's 1,600 EtherLambos total. So, and we have all our different models, and we fell in love, and a lot of people started to, catch on at the time, started hearing about these, and it started getting crazy. So we reached out at that time, we reached out to the founders, got in touch with them, had a couple, initial back and forth with them. And then, we started learning more about the different models, and that's what got us into a whole nother level of things. So, and a whole nother, I guess, journey with, different people that are connected to the collections as well. So
that is quite interesting. I'll dive into that in a second. Just for clarification, the wrapper, did the dev team write it, or is there somebody in the community?
So the dev team did that. And yeah, that's something that was, a little weird initially about the contract that we had to work through. That's something the dev team has all done behind the scenes. So yeah, thankfully, that's worked out for us. It's been really helpful. Initially it's kind of been like mysterious, working with the dev team, and everyone's kind of been like, well, why aren't they super active on Discord, et cetera? They like to, sort of stay behind the scenes, but I work with them on almost a daily basis. So, I have very frequent calls with them. They're not the type of people that are super, out there in the open. They like to remain behind the scenes and, work on the project itself. So, hence my role, and hence, my role working as the admin for them since this happened. So
it's kind of funny. And now I'm beginning to see this happen or pop up more and more. Original devs from NFT projects, we'll say predating 2019, they tend to be more old school. They just want to be heads down. They want to build, they want to program. They don't want to be on Twitter. They don't want to be shit posting. Maybe it gets more traction to the collection, but that's kind of what the community is here for. We're here to show the bags, but also educate and tell people why, or I wouldn't say tell, we have to tell the story as to why these collections are historically significant, especially being in EtherLambos case, a very memeable. It's a meme that's kind of driven crypto into the position that is today and pioneered the meme marketing tactics. Outside of Lambos, I think Moon is probably the second most, or maybe the Doge, the dogs, which I know there's a lot of information about that I keep hearing. Do you know the exact date of the first EtherLambo that was minted?
Yes, it was March 4th, 2018. And the contract was written in 2017. And I think you'll find a lot of nostalgia / nods to that, that big run that we had in cryptocurrency in 2017 and the Lambo flexes, that everyone was going after and doing at the time after that big pop and that huge run. And this is what I think is really cool about this is it's not only, a cool flex for now for the metaverse, but it's also sort of a stamp in history of that time period and a nod to that at the same time, right? It's sort of what people love most about historical NFTs is they kind of point to what happened during that time period, or they're kind of an artifact from that time. And something that's really cool about Lambos is you have that sort of memory stamped in time there. This is the first car NFT collection, first Lambo NFT collection. So these are the OGs, and as the space evolves, I can just see more and more users coming after this collection because of that.
Car NFTs are heavily underutilized in the growing narrative of the metaverse. As we know, if the open metaverse is really going to be dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of metaverses, you're going to need a vehicle to be able to drive around. And to have a classic collection like this, where you could be driving around in these sweet vehicles, which all have historical significance underneath them and tied into a different story. What's a better way to get around? The only metaverse that I'm aware of that actually has some sort of vehicle is Somnium Space, at least from a 3D perspective. But I would like to see these bad boys become pixelated in the growing 2D metaverses as well. That seems like the most common use case, but as we know in crypto, there will be many, many things that pop up outside of this.
Yes, sir. And I will say, I mean, there's some stuff in the works behind the scenes. So that's something that's definitely been on the radar for the team. Being able to whip the OG Lambos in the metaverse and, have these come to life as the next step. And that's a very natural progression for us. I will say as well, we are also working on having Lambos in another medium, another big medium that, we'll be releasing in the coming weeks. And, it's really exciting. I will say, I mean, a lot of people love, putting their profile picture or their ape or their punk or their cat or what have you with their Lambos inside their Lambo, either as their Twitter PFP or their background, etc. And the new medium that we're working on will be, collaborating with another large PFP collection that a lot of people know. So we're excited to share more about that as we can. And that's going to be, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that. So millions and millions of people will be seeing that. So we're really excited to get that out there as well.
Yeah, time to get in now. Let's talk about each individual Lambo. They're obviously named after significant people or blockchains, protocols that exist within crypto. And think this is from 2018. So a lot of the new ERC20s and NFTs that exist post 2018 aren't integrated. And those are kind of the more popular ones. So Vitalik, obviously named after Vitalik, Satoshi. Monero is from the private cryptocurrency Monero. Charlie Lee. What is
Litecoin?
Which one's Model 1?
Yeah, Model 1 is, there's a couple different references there. So, if you take a look, one represents a couple different things. So it represents not only cryptocurrency, but it also represents and there was a nod to it recently, but it's also a nod to in a matrix reference for basically we had released recently a limited color upgrade for the one that was a limited matrix upgrade based on the name. And if you've seen the movie Matrix, you'll know the one reference with Keanu Reeves. But pretty cool reference there, and the limited upgrade is super cool. And that's a good thing to touch on now that we brought that up. Obviously, it's called the Model 1 Neo. But the EtherLambos are also the first upgradable NFT known on the blockchain, and so. What's really cool about the OG Lambos is that any Lambo that you buy, you can make upgrades to. So they have, and you go to your garage there in order to make the upgrades. But you would go to your car and you can actually tune your car within the site. So make changes and upgrades right there. And super cool. I mean, there's no other NFT that really has that capability from this time period. It's the first one to do that. So, and the devs have been releasing new color upgrades here, even within the past couple of weeks. It's a cool way to, have a new flex and make changes and differentiate yourself.
Right here, we have a max power. Is this right now currently as it stands just for novelty purposes, or can these top speeds and horsepowers be translated into something, I guess, tangible in a different world?
That's a great question. So right now, obviously they're just more for novelty purposes, but in the future, these will come into play with some things that we're working on. And this has been in discussion for our next step going into the Metaverse. So super cool. What's cool about the T-Rex there as well, this is actually all electric. And so that's one of our all electric cars. And this one's named after Tron, and the founder, Justin Sun. So this is one of my favorite models aesthetically, the looks of it. It feels like the Batmobile to me. It's got that vibe.
Yeah, if Justin Sun is Batman, then I think I've got some more questions to ask. What is this? Is this question mark? Is this just for somebody to contact you guys and maybe have some sort of partnership or collaboration to introduce new models?
Yeah. So, this is actually something where you can design and build your own EtherLambo. And so whether it be, another brand or another collection, or you wanted to build one on your own, this is something they used to do. It's not something that they're actively doing right now or fielding inquiries. I will say we've had a lot of people reach out about creating their own unique EtherLambos with other collections, which we're open to discussing, and some different things. But Yeah, this is a really good segue into um, what is also known as really the first corporate collaboration NFT in the model Coinshares. So EtherLambos collaborated with Coinshares in 2018 to create their own EtherLambos model. And the co-founder slash one of the executives at Coinshares, Meltem, who is a big voice in the community, led this initiative. And they actually use these Coinshares models as a proof of attendance protocol for one of their events in New York. And so super cool. I mean, this is a relic from the past that also has a lot of history because of the collaboration with the corporation, which we're starting to see more and more of as new brands come into the space. This is really the first known one to do that on the Ethereum blockchain. I'm not aware of any others on any other blockchains as well. And so, and one that was really kind of lost and mysterious for a while until our community pushed to find out where these were, because we couldn't find where any of the Coinshares models were. We were trying to figure out who had them. And so we actually reached out to Meltem on Twitter and got connected with her and ended up doing a giveaway here late last year. So that was a really cool initiative. She was like, let's give them away, like let's give them out to the community. And I think they were going for, something like 5 ETH at the time or something, 5, 6 ETH. I mean, that's a big giveaway. So, it was a really cool initiative that we did there.
That's quite an initiative. I love historical projects that can end up connecting with one of the OG minters or one of the OG partners to kind of fill that gap in that narrative.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It was so cool. I mean, we reached out to her and she's big into crypto rocks. But it was almost like, she was like, what? Like these are pumping. Like I had no idea you guys like rediscovered these and at the time. And so it was super cool. Just reconnecting with her on the project, and she was really excited to share it with the community and get it out there and obviously show what they had created. So
explain to me these tuning options, because as we were scrolling through some of the cars, not every single one seems to have this tuning option. First, did the tuning options exist before or while you guys were discovering it, or was this utility added later?
Yeah, so those have been there since the devs created the collection, these initial tuning options. So the options for upgrading the car itself, just in terms of the look for hood scoops or a rear wing, etc. Different additions and soup ups of the car, if you will. Those were already in place. Those have been in place since they released the cars themselves. For the different color upgrades, those were only released recently, and only some of the models have the color options. Yeah, as you'll see there, Monera has some pretty sick ones. The Scanner Red,
Ooh, that
Gray
one
Matter,
is sick.
that was a limited one. And the Purple Haze, that was a request from the community. So another really cool one as well. I mean, any of the upgraded cars have gone at a premium. If you've made the upgrade, especially the limited editions, like, the Gray Matter one, for example, and others, there's only 10 or 12 or 20, upgrades, period, that'll ever be released. So definitely adds to that, scarcity factor, and, definitely adds to sort of, making it a bigger flex within the community.
Absolutely. All right, Charlie Lee, I know there's a story behind this. Even recently, Was this, as you mentioned with Coinshares, that was a collab. Was this Charlie Lee model a collab, or was he somebody that maybe the devs looked up to and they wanted to embrace that in some way through a car?
Yeah, so this was sort of a collab, because in the past, when they were developing the different cars, they reached out to the community members to field what interests there were in what cars they'd like to create, because obviously these blockchains at the time were much different than they are now. Even the popularity of certain ones, et cetera. So, they had reached out and voted within the community and asked people, if they wanted this to be created. But, before they did that, they tweeted at Charlie Lee and said, should we create a model Charlie Litecoin? And he was like, yes, absolutely. Responded back like right away. So they're like, all right, we're doing it. We're creating this. And, that was back in 2018. And, we saw the timestamps. There are a lot of people like retweeting that tweet from back in the day because they dug it up. And we went back to this, and recently, all the way up until recently, we just released that limited upgrade of the green light, which is super cool. And with that, the dev said, hey, we'd like to gift the model Charlie serial number 1, because, the lower the serial number, more valuable within the community. They said, we'd like to get this to you, Charlie. And Charlie accepted it. And it was a big thing on Twitter. Everybody went crazy over that. But yeah, it was really cool. It kind of came full circle from Charlie telling him to create it to like all the way delivering, Charlie the serial number 1. So pretty sick.
Absolutely beautiful. So these limited option ones, is there a cost associated with this, or is it just first come, first serve?
There's a cost associated with it. So I think, for the limited color upgrades, it was something like 0.1, Ethereum or something like that as the cost. It's been slightly different costs for different upgrades depending on what they are. But not super expensive. It was, the limited ones were on a time basis, and it was like released, and we only have a limited supply, right? So first come, first serve, whoever gets to it. And I mean, the Charlie one, I think sold out within a matter of like 2 or 3 minutes. So, people were waiting on that to be released, and, setting their alerts and like, all right, as soon as that's out, I'm going straight to the site and getting those. So,
and the upgrades, I have to ask this since somebody who's in the Mooncat community who also has customizable features, are the features on chain, are you aware of, or is this something that's still being debated?
That's a good question. And honestly, I don't know. I can't answer that question very well. I'd probably have to have one of the devs answer that question for you, but I'm happy to follow up. I know there's been a lot of discussion around those things, and whether or not they've been changed. There's some collectors within the community, even within, EtherLambos, that have said, hey, I don't want to make any changes or upgrades, to my OG. I want to keep it exactly how it is. And then there's other people who are like, I want to give it all the tuning upgrades, bells and whistles, and, et cetera. So I think that's open for, debate. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, the idea of being on chain is something that seems to be more important in the world of historical NFTs than kind of the newer one. Excuse me, because everything else is hosted on IPFS. I would be interested to hear that explanation. All right, let's go over to the car activity. Before we start diving into this, so we have 753 owners for 1,600 Lambos. I'm curious about the distribution methods. So when you uncovered these, were the cars just ready to be claimed? Did the devs hold the majority of them still? Was it dispersed? What was that distribution method?
That's a really good question. So there were several owners that already had these from back in the day, right? They had already minted these and owned them, and they hadn't touched them. And we have a lot of those owners that are still in our Discord community today, which is insane. And I think it's so awesome. But the devs held some. The devs had a decent amount, which were sold off, and there were actually still some that were available to mint on the site still at the time. And there were only 2 models, I believe, that were still left that could be minted. And one of them was the serial number 1. And then there were some Moneras left as well, but there were only a limited supply of each of those. All of the OGs had already been minted. And so there were only, a certain amount that were still left to be minted directly from the site. And so, yeah, I mean, as we discussed earlier, a lot of the collectors in the community seek after those OG models. Mm-hmm. And those OG models are all the ones minted in 2018. And those are every model, serial number 1 through 100 for each model, except for T-Rex, which is 1 through 50.
Interesting.
So
why is that?
I think it's mainly how they were released at the time. So I think they released, as a part of the contract, they wanted to release those serial numbers first for each model going down. And we have some devs that have dug super deep into obviously researching all this, and we've gone through the entire contract countless times. But we even have the order. I mean, so Vitalics were actually the ones that were minted first, which is very interesting, right?
That is actually.
So if you're going after the very oldest, the Vitalics first, then Satoshi, then Monera, then Charlie, then One, and then Coinshares, and then T-Rex. If we're going in order of the OGs and the way they were minted. So
yeah, I actually want to buy an EtherLambo during this conversation. I haven't yet, and I've been preparing for this interview so I could figure out what is actually the best one. It looks like,
let's go.
Yeah, it looks like purely just because of the supply that the Monero ones and the ones seem to be the most abundant on the floor, depending on how many people own it. And then it looks like we start seeing the Charlie Lee ones start popping up a little bit. And then it seems like the most expensive ones are probably the Coinshares or... Yeah. Is it, would you consider Coinshares probably the most sought after one, or is there one that I'm missing?
The most sought after is Satoshi, the Satoshi model, which is only 100 total supply. And I think the floor for that is around 10 right now. 9. And yeah, just after that, I would say Vitalik. Probably it's debatable. Vitalik, then Charlie, T-Rex and Charlie, and then Coinshares, etc. So it's I think it's interesting because Satoshi's at the time of discovery and rediscovery and sort of a run up and people starting to first find out about these. We had Satoshi selling for 33 ETH.
Wow.
So they've had a really, really solid all-time high, and they've leveled out a little bit now. And we've seen a resurgence here in the last couple weeks and month or so with Leonidas and Gary V and the Crypto Skulls rediscovery, which has been really cool. And, it was really cool. Leonidas picked up, some EtherLambos, as a part of that. And, this has been really, really fun. But yeah, those Satoshis, it's crazy. I mean, there's a really interesting narrative there, with them too. Yeah, I mean, you think about like, 1 of 100 supply from the same time as Ether rocks. There's a narrative where a lot of people are saying, well, they're the same supply as Ether rocks and they were minted around the same time. So, the value of those should really be, comparable. So it's those feel like a really hidden gem too for, in terms of value there as well. But I want to get into this more and hear more about like what models stand out to you and what you're interested in.
Yeah, I am a little bit of a vintage maxi. Date is a huge deterministic for me. This is kind of what in my personal journey dove me down to like experimenting in Namecoin and all of these different models. I'm really looking at this Charlie one for 2 because it's number 13. I was kind of looking at the Vitalik.
Super low.
Yeah, I like that low number. My favorite number is number 5, and I saw someone had it listed for 10 ETH, so I was like, I'm gonna have to come back at that. So at some point in time. The Coinshares one is pretty cool too. At 2.5 for number 11. I don't know. To me, it's just something about Litecoin, even if it is a shit coin, and if it never reaches, like, it has some sort of main adoption, but Charlie Lee's a key figure who literally dumped at the Pico top in 2018 or 2017, which I find kind of funny and kind of in the ethos of crypto. Also, I try to think about driving these around in the metaverse whenever that day does happen, which colors really stand out. I hope that maybe the devs can introduce some sort of different colors. Silver is pretty cool. I kind of like this sleek model, and it has a story behind it, which some of these other ones don't, or it has like a confirming story at least.
Exactly. Which some of the others we're waiting on. I love the Charlies. I think, I personally think, they're one of the coolest models. Obviously, they have a super, limited supply as well. There's only 200 Charlies. So that's a really cool factor as well. And in being that we just gifted the serial one to Charlie himself was really, really cool. And I mean, it's funny because you'll get interest for a lot of different reasons. I think the Litecoin aspect is really cool for the same reason. I think it's like an old historical, coin, right? That just has a lot of history to it, right? And yeah, it's a dinosaur coin, but it's it's got a really cool history, and for that reason, like, that gives it more value for me.
Oh, and I get to buy this off of somebody who's paper handing it. Oh,
exactly, man. Because that serial number is ridiculous, especially at that supply for the Charlie model. I mean, that's absurd.
I'm doing this.
Let's go.
So the creator fee. Oh my God, gas is $77, but here we're doing this. So always have safety, guys. Make sure that you always have your shit tied to a ledger so that you don't get hacked. So officially joining the EtherLambo party. These have actually been one of my top priorities for a long time, and having these conversations to help me figure out what's actually right, because I probably wouldn't have figured out the number thing, although it makes sense. Sometimes you overlook some of these like simple identities to the project itself. So while that's pending.
Welcome to the Lambo fam, brother. Welcome.
I'm excited. So within the Lambo community, has there been any conversation to introducing new cars, or maybe some uncoveries, or anything with the dev team that they bring up?
Great question. We had this brought up recently because everyone's been diving into the history of these, and it was found in an article from 2018 that they had created a Doge EtherLambo model, and but it was never released. And so everyone was like, "Where is this thing?" Like we have a huge following in the community that is big into Doge. So we actually did a community vote within the Discord should we bring back this model? This model was created. Would you guys want to bring this back? And it was an overwhelming yes. Everyone was like, let's do this. Let's do this. So, so you'll see there. Yeah, we have it pinned on
right here
on the Twitter account as well, that we created, the EtherLambos team created this Doge model back in 2018. It was never released, and we're actually planning on releasing it here in the coming weeks. So there hasn't been a date set, but in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the Doge model will be out. So we are super excited to get that released, and everyone within the community is beyond jacked. So I'm excited. Wow. I'm excited to have that out there. And also share with the Doge community too, because they obviously have such a great community.
Yeah, this is incredible. So maybe you won't be able to answer this, but since these are going to be technically new mints, is it going to be minted through the old contract as the ERC20 and then wrapped, or do they have to mint it on top of the new contract?
That's a great question. That hasn't been defined yet. And obviously everyone within the community is super cognizant of the fact that we want to keep the collection scarce. Also, like, to be pointed out, these were created back then, but they were never minted. They were never developed. So these are going to be new models essentially, but finishing the collection. The devs are behind the scenes working on that. That'll be released when it comes out. We'll be really transparent about it for everyone. But but everyone's super excited. It's obviously still a part of that history in the past because of when it was developed and created at the time. And we've gotten some confirmations from the Doge community already. So so super excited to get that out there.
Yeah, it's just Lambos, car NFT, Doge is incredible. You're probably going to have to make that a pretty large supply to satisfy the Doge community, but it actually coincides with this new found momentum behind Doge Party, which a lot of people are not aware of. Doge Party is on Counterparty, and it's full of Dogecoin NFTs, I guess, depending on your definition of tokens that are minted on Counterparty, but could have even more momentum. It's historic. Then the mint date will obviously be 2022, but if it's a part of the original contract, then it's still iconic.
100%. And I mean, it's really exciting to get that out there. Yeah, I've been diving into a lot of that history too. Like yourself, I see you got an egg as well. Mm-hmm. I'm also plugged into that community as well, and have one of those, been plugged into the history there. So, love being a part of that and really finding new treasures, things like that. So let's go.
I didn't know you were an egg holder.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm super bullish on just the, not only the history, but scarcity with those. I mean, it's really similar, to when you talk about, history and scarcity for different reasons, but, only 277 eggs, minted 2014, 2015. Really a true tie to, social media and Twitter, like first PFP, one of the first PFP NFTs, which is crazy.
Yeah, it blows my mind. Also, the definition of PFP has been expanding ever since Larva Labs claimed the CryptoPunks to be the first NFT, and then the first PFP, and then all these different, I'm sure you're aware of this too, all the different semantical debates between what actually is a PFP, what's actually an NFT, what's a token, and the intentionality behind things, right? Because Twitter eggs were not an intentional collection. They were basically a bunch of people who had the Twitter egg as their avatar on Twitter, minted through one name, which then saved the image into the blockchain itself. So there's a lot of different debates of intentional art and all these different classifications. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the community and the narrative that's being told, and how the story is described.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, if you look at the Ethereum white paper and you see what Vitalik defines an NFT as, you have Namecoin right there. So in my opinion, it's, that's for sure one of the earliest, if not the earliest forms of NFTs, and love being a part of that history. I love collections that are first, right? Like with EtherLambos, first car NFT, first upgradable NFT. We have, the first collaboration with another corporation, those things. I mean, there's just history written all over it for so many different reasons, right?
Right. Yeah. And even in this definition, it depends on what you define as upgradable, because Mooncats technically you could name your cat. So is that upgradable or is that a naming feature? Don't really know. Ethereum, technically you could build on the land. Is that upgradable? Right. So, or is that customization? There's all these different debates as to what the actual definition means.
Wait, you can update the name of your Mooncat?
Yeah. So if you look at my PFP, Mooncats actually had the first ever naming feature. So my Mooncat, Mr. Moo, was the first ever named Mooncat.
Wow.
Yeah. And also
awesome, man.
Potentially the first ever named NFT. But then I actually got into this debate with Brantley last summer about what actually is what's considered a named NFT, because let me get back to our conversation. What actually is a named NFT? Because domains are technically names, but the argument that I had with him was that, or the conversation was that domains, you have to have the name inscribed to mint the NFT. With Mooncats, the NFT was created and then you named the Mooncat after that. So it really just depends on kind of the semantical debate. But yeah, Mooncats, they have a lot of history. They have first named NFT until something else pops up, but I haven't been able to figure that out yet. But then it becomes like, what's upgradable, right? Is the name actually upgradable? You're just writing the name into the blockchain itself, but you're not changing the appearance of it. So there's a bunch of different debates as to what it would actually entail.
That's super interesting, and I appreciate your background on that. I didn't know that yet, and I'm excited to learn more about Mooncats in general. I'm hearing whispers that there may be interest in doing some type of Twitter Spaces later this week with the EtherLambos team. So I would love to get that going. But that's super, super interesting. I would love to learn more about the history behind those as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And these are conversations and debates that will have to continually be ongoing, but we could even just talk about, and I'll be part of that Twitter Space on Saturday. I've been talking with Noosh about it.
Awesome.
Just the idea of just customizable NFTs. It was really something that was not looked after for a long time. I know on Bitcoin, they have interoperable tokens between like Saratobi and Spells of Genesis, but it wasn't really customizable. You couldn't really change it. You could just take the avatar and use it across different games, which is, iconic within itself. But customization is something that we're starting to see a little bit of fragments pop up in the modern NFTs, with like Adidas putting on your Bored Ape, or you could dress your Bored Ape with the Adidas. And now with these different pods and metaverses, you can change your gallery or your appearance, and those are technically upgrading the NFT itself, right? Because if it's space pod for the artifact thing, you can change anything inside. Technically, you're changing the NFT itself. But these are the things that predate it and kind of helped pioneer that movement. Customization it's a interesting and ever-growing concept. We're starting to see this happen in kind of the modern NFT world with Bored Apes, and Adidas had that partnership with the tracksuit. Obviously, that isn't on chain, but I think we're going to start seeing this kind of trend ever growing, especially in the metaverse with people's avatar and their pets and their cars. We all want to stand out, and the amount of wealth or amount of money thrown at these NFTs is a social status, but eventually all of that's going to build on top of each other to add more additional properties to it.
Absolutely. And I really feel like right now we're in this emergence period with NFTs, right? It's going to change the course of history where we're at right now. And we're seeing more and more activity than we've ever seen before with, OpenSea, each week, each month, the volumes, higher and higher than ever before. We're seeing more wallets created. And now we're heading up on, a very large marketplace being released here very soon. Hopefully, sometime in the next couple of weeks, I think. And I think that's really going to change the game as well, right? It's going to give a lower barrier of entry for people to get into these things, to learn more about NFTs. I think it's exciting what's heading up here with the Super Bowl and everything that's surrounding NFTs. I think there's going to be a lot of buzz from that as well. And I think new users more and more, in my opinion, are going to start to look to where this started and how we got here. And I think historicals are becoming more and more important as the space continues to evolve for that very reason. And what's exciting is there's only, a certain amount of historicals, and that's never going to change. So, in my opinion, do your own research, not financial advice, but I think they're one of the best bets in this space because, there's new projects that can come out all the time, but historicals are always going to be there, and it's never going to change. And as more and more users start to dive in and we really go through all of this history, I think we're going to start to uncover even more about the space and details about first customizations and things like that than ever before, because we're still so early, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's if you look at it on a timeline, it's like we're only 5, 6, 7 years in, depending on when you want to date back to as the first. We go back to 2014 or even a little earlier than that. So it's it's super exciting, and I'm really more excited about what's going on right now in this space than I've been in a long time about anything. So
I'm in the same exact boat. And with historicals, it's a completely different investment thesis than those who are trading in the modern world, where it's more of a collector's mindset than it is a trader's mindset. And so for some that aren't aware of those two differences, they do tend to suffer from some anguish, right? Because they spend 5-7 ETH into an asset, and then they want to flip it in the next few weeks, which you can do with some of these newer collections, but with historicals you cannot. But the cool part about this is most historicals generally have a higher premium, but you have to have a longer time horizon to sell it, because the story still has to be told behind that asset and the narrative still has to be constructed. There's no minting war, there's no pre-sale whitelist hype, there's no social media accounts that have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's purely those who are going in, uncovering history, and helping rewrite the historical books, which sounds kind of weird saying it, but this is the space that we're at with NFTs.
It's super exciting. And, for those of you that are listening, that are either new to the space or even been in it for a long time, but you haven't looked much into historicals, I encourage you to check it out, do some digging, start checking out some of these older projects and see what they're all about. I think you'll be really, really excited and curious to see what you find. And there's some really cool people in the space that are following this and have created some pretty cool timelines to track, when these projects were first minted over time and where they stand sort of on that chart. And that's super interesting to me. That's what hooked me. That's what got me really fascinated with this. Like, I grew up collecting, sports cards, trading cards, like understood the collectible game. My family has always been into like antiques and things like that over the years. And so there's so many aspects about this that I think really hit the mark. My grandmother had, paintings from, hundreds of years ago from, big painters all over the world. And, I really think what NFTs are doing is changing the game for art as a whole as well, which I think is really cool too. So, yeah, it's super exciting.
Programmable art, programmable collections. Taking EtherLambos, the 1600 scarce collection, and kind of speculating on the future utility of cards in the metaverse. Are there certain things that come to mind that maybe aren't spoken about in the public discourse outside of me driving my Lambos in Decentraland?
Man, there's a lot of things that really stand out to me. I think what's not talked about a lot is that there's a huge in real life car community and car collectors that have really yet to fully be, tapped into this space that I believe will be a huge part of the future of cars in the metaverse, like a lot of other areas for NFTs. But for example, we just had someone within our community who lives in the Miami area and has, friends that own luxury car dealerships. And he said, let's collaborate. We need to do something. I want to sell the first EtherLambo at a dealership in real life, and I think I just think it's so exciting. I think there's a lot there. And I think if you think about the muscle cars of the past and car collections in general, over time and the collectors that are there's going to be so much that will come into the space. And, the other thing that's really exciting is more actual car companies are starting to get into this space too and create their own collections. And, we're hearing whispers about Lamborghini creating a metaverse key and things like that. And it only makes our community more excited because, we got the OGs, we got the original ones, and this only brings more people into the space that are interested in car NFTs and what the future holds there. So, so I can't wait. Just talking about these things, it's crazy. The amount of activity and things that we have going on right now. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Can't wait for my metaverse car shows. That's gonna be fun. The interoperability, the hybrid models. There's a bright future ahead. So Stu, I just want to thank you for coming on and doing this. I'm glad now that I could be a part of the EtherLambos community, hopefully grow. And devs, if you're listening, please release new colors for the Charlie Lee model so that I can customize it just like I like to customize my Mooncats.
Jake, yes. And thanks so much, man. Excited to have you as a part of the community and, happy to chat anytime. And, maybe on my way back to the West Coast and need to stop and make a trip in Las Vegas and say what's up. So
yeah, hit me up. I've hung out with many NFT friends who come out here. So we'll have a good time and we'll continue to grow. I'm going to have to watch and look for that Doge model. I feel like that is going to bring a lot of traction to the EtherLambo community, a lot of attention and awareness that's needed.
Yes, sir. Next couple of weeks. So go ahead and join the Discord. Anyone that's interested in finding out the news on that, we'll be announcing it soon. So
let's go. Everything's linked below. Thank you, Stu. Thank you guys for listening and watching. We'll catch you next time.